Without further ado, Giovanni, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Ed?
I can't complain, man. I'm just glad to stand next to you because you're a great man, and we both know that.
You got to stop that.
We got to stop it. But Giovanni, you mentioned some interesting things in the side talk there with regard to social media and some of the things that can happen to people, and we won't go into some of the things you mentioned before. But
please,
yeah, really. But talk to us. I mean, let's finish where we started last week. We were talking about social media. We were talking about Instagram. We were talking about the proper use of it, and maybe sometimes the improper use. So, what do you have for us today?
Well, I want to wrap up with the discussion I had with Michael last week on business strategy with Instagram. And last week we had talked about tactics and strategy and execution. And hopefully you don't have to rehash that. If you want to go back and listen to the first part of that conversation, it's up on the WFN1.com website. Want to wrap it up now. This week, talk about how do you measure the impact of what you're doing, because obviously if we're up there we're online, we're kicking around a bunch of dust online, you're paying people to do this stuff. At the end of the day, especially with, I would say even with marketing, you've got to have a way to measure the results of what you're doing, so if you're doing the right thing, if it's actually benefiting the business and pushing in the right direction.
But could they do it themselves, or they need an expert like you to help them monitor the
I would say you want someone dedicated that can learn it. I mean, none of this stuff, I hate to say this, I mean, you can do half of all your social media stuff for business without having somebody who's quote-unquote an expert. I mean, if you're doing nothing now, or if you're doing a poor job at what you're doing now, just having someone dedicated to it, that's passionate about, that cares about what they're looking at, is going to be a step in the right direction. I would love everybody to have access to an expert, of course, right?
Like you?
But, someone maybe that's better than me.
But nobody's better than you.
So I would say at least if you've got someone who's moving in a targeted direction and they understand, the basics of marketing, because a lot of stuff that we're doing online it's not new from the standpoint of the same advertising and marketing we've been doing for decades. It's just we've got a different platform to do it. It's not TV and radio and billboards anymore, or it's still some of that. But even back in the day when you had, print advertising and stuff like that, you still want to have some kind of a metric about what the results were. If you had a sell, was I getting a bunch of leads from this magazine or from this TV show or whatever. So on Instagram in particular, the first thing I want to mention, and this is pretty new for us, is in the recent past, it was fairly difficult to get stats out of Instagram. It was kind of a black box. You'd go in there.
Why do you think they would be resistant to give stats about it? They just not want to show that it may not be as powerful as they thought, or what would be the reason for that?
Their position would be, and it's the same position that Snapchat's in today, is that as soon as you start turning a platform like that over into a platform where folks who care about statistics want more and more analytics out of it, it loses its flavor of the week for the folks that use it. So you've got this conflict between folks go to an Instagram or go to a Snapchat or some of these other applications. In the first days of Facebook, they'd go there, and Twitter, because that's where they could go and just be themselves and socialize. As soon as people like me get in there and start messing it up and start shoving ads in front of their faces, then it's not fun anymore, right? And as marketers, we've got to be mature enough to kind of look at the wasteland of all the MySpaces and the AOLs and the Dogsters and whatever the previous generation of social media accounts are platforms, and own the fact that we ruined a lot of that stuff because we're marketers and that's what we do, right? So we've got to be sensitive to coming up with marketing and advertising plans that consumers actually want to consume. Number one.
Well, that brings up an interesting question, Giovanni. You just kind of threw a question out there in my mind.
I have so many enemies right now.
This is true. This is true. And thinking about what you just said, what you just described was the ability to make the thing, I guess, cool and I guess popular in lieu of actually having it work before you actually you start looking at. You mentioned the analytics. Mm-hmm. That's really what you're talking about. It's got to be cool. People have to want to use a platform. You have to create migration. You have to create adoption in lieu of just having a pure ad
revenue.
Platform.
Yeah, in lieu of revenue. And that's why you get a lot of this hocus pocus with tech startups, because they'll sit there and they'll burn through hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, promising a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? And they're always talking about it's about attention, it's about eyeballs and all that kind of stuff, right? And you're hoping at the end of the day that once you get that targeted audience, and the audience is one that you want to get access to, you can start integrating into it either advertising or some kind of a revenue stream that's not going to chase them all the way to the next thing. It's pretty hard to find those. Facebook is one that's been able to fairly successfully do it, but their younger audience is completely plateaued. Their younger audience is not growing anymore. Let me get really quickly.
Is not growing?
No, it's not. I mean, they're having birthdays, but the size of the audience is not growing. Okay, was that clear for you? Okay, they're still having birthdays. This is not Benjamin Buttons.
Yeah, I was thinking, wow, man, that just kind of caught me off guard.
Stunted, it's stunted growth biologically. Yeah. Before I have to jump into next week on Instagram analytics, I don't know how much time I've got left, but let's try to hop in on some of these so that it's not a completely wasted segment. So the big three things I'm looking for on Instagram that I can actually measure for a client are, number one, attention. You can look and see how many people view your content, how many people view your videos. That is a decent measurement of how interested people are in your content, because stuff is going to flow through their news feed fairly quickly. And if that first thing that they see, that first glimmer of kind of an image or a video that they see grabs their attention and they click on it and do something, that's indicative of having content that is going to be well received by your audience. And if you don't have that, you don't get anything else after this. So first of all, we're looking for attention. It's not an end goal. It's not going to convert anything necessarily, but it has to be there for you to get to the conversion. Number two is going to be, the next level is going to be engagement. Are people liking your stuff? Surely are they commenting on your stuff? And most importantly, are they sharing their stuff with friends? Again, a share and a comment or a like, and this is the frustration with business owners, and I totally get it. A share, a comment, and a like do not put money in the bank for you. But if you don't have those, you're not going to get to a point where you can get a conversion. If you're building a house, the plumbing and the electricity doesn't cover your head and keep you warm necessarily. But if you don't have plumbing and electricity, you're missing an integral part of a home that makes it comfortable, makes you want to live in it. So we have to grow from attention into engagement, and then we have to move into action. The last and the most important part, and the unicorn, especially in Instagram marketing, is once I've got people commenting on liking and sharing our content, can I then move them to action? Can I have them show up to a live event? Can I have them click on a link up in my bio to go and take advantage of a coupon, sign up for a newsletter, download a white paper, or, oh my gosh, purchase something? Wouldn't that be nuts?
You could actually buy something.
To actually have a social media account where somebody ends up at a sales funnel by pulling out a credit card, that's the main goal, right? But you don't jump from launching an account to making sales. And so the challenge that you have as a business is taking these steps up this ladder to get to that point where you're converting, and you don't get there unless you're measuring stuff. And on Instagram, it's much, much more limited than it is on other social media sites. But if you're paying attention to attention, likes, shares, and comments, if those things are in line, then you should be able to mature and move on to the next phase, which is how do we now convert these folks and help us pay for the products and services that we have to offer them.
Exactly. Well, Giovanni, we have about 30 seconds or so left here. You mentioned something we've argued about before. Again, how do you get people to understand the long form that's associated with this and get them to be willing to take that step to do the long form to do it?
Yeah, I will tell you that it is in almost every situation. I don't have an answer you want. In almost every situation, I have a CEO or a C-level executive who's the champion of what I do for them that already has that mindset. They are someone that thinks about businesses in the medium and long term. Anytime someone comes to me and wants to do viral, I just have to bag out, because I'm just like, I don't create unicorns. I'm a slow and steady wins the race kind of a marketer.
Evidently. Well, Giovanni, once again, thank you again for educating me in social media, because obviously I need a lot of help there, as you probably know. That was Giovanni Gallucci, resident social media expert for WFN.1.com, that is. This section was brought to you by the Vitamin Patch. I'll be right back with the Private Equity Spotlight.